final presentation. Dr. Fiore, are you, can you summarize in 5 minutes? Please. Really, we have to be out of here by 6 and we've got to get that picture. So, okay.
So thank you, Jean, and thank you for the invitation. Here I will like in 5 minutes to resume what we learned with the new study on the relation between pregnancy and desmoid, because you know that it's supposed to be a relation between pregnancy and desmoid. Many patients are female in young age. Many desmoid are discovered just after a recent pregnancy. So we wonder whether the event of a new pregnancy after diagnosis may be a risk for occurrence or progression of the disease, or in case of the pregnancy, may the mother or the baby be at risk for some obstetric complications. So why these data are so needed today? Because we learned today that the active surveillance is more and more common. Over the years now, all the patients are offered from the beginning active surveillance. That means that more and more patients are living with a desmoid under active surveillance during their fertile lifetime. So this is the summary of the collaborators to the study. Actually, we are very happy that also some patient advocates participate. DTRF contributed to the series. Some other patient association also participate. It was an international study, and the primary aim was to measure the rate of progression during pregnancy that was defined in 2 periods. So from the beginning of pregnancy to the delivery and until 1 year after delivery. We distinguish these 2 periods because obviously during pregnancy is much more complex to decide in case an active treatment is needed. Among the secondary outcomes, we also measure what was the chance that after a pregnancy actually treatment is needed, not only progression, but the treatment is needed, and if there is any harm or complication for the pregnancy itself and the baby. We communicated the preliminary result during ASCO, that is the major oncology congress in US in June, but now we have updated the final results, and we screened more than 700 patients, and we were able to analyze 177 pregnancy in 157 patients. So that means that many patients has more than 1 pregnancy after the diagnosis. The initial screening population were asked to answer some question about the decision about the about the family planning after the diagnosis, and this is very important because these are the results of the screening survey. We divided between the participating country just to understand if there is any cultural differences, but you can see that 18% of patients postpone pregnancy because of the diagnosis of the desmoid. 26% completely avoided to have new pregnancies because of the diagnosis of desmoid. And in 2% of cases, there was a voluntary interruption of the pregnancy just because of the diagnosis. So this identifies the relevance of the clinical need to provide accurate data and information for counseling for patients because they need to be informed. So this is the population. Nothing is really relevant because they are the typical population of the female desmoid patients. I just want to underline why we divided 3 groups to be analyzed, because in the group A, we collected patients who have a diagnosis of desmoid during the pregnancy. So that was in this group, we answer whether there was a threat for the pregnancy, and by definition, these are pregnancy-related desmoids. So we know that the history of this subset of disease is different. But in the other two groups, we have the group B, where we have patient in active surveillance and had the pregnancy while the tumor was there. Or we have the group C that were patient operated, so with no tumor evident at the time of pregnancy. So these two groups, B and C, is different, and we analyze separately because in this case, a patient decided to get pregnant. And so here is where the decision has to be done, and the information are important. This is the initial. So these are the data of progression, the clinical progression during and after pregnancy. We had 18% of estimated probability of progress during the pregnancy, 13% estimated probability of progression in the year after delivery. There was a very sophisticated analysis because we estimated the risk for the single progression in the single patients. So that means that the risk increases from pregnancy to pregnancy if the progression happened in the previous one, and on the opposite, the risk to have a progression decreases from pregnancy to pregnancy if in the previous pregnancy you did not experience any progression. And the rate of shift to an active treatment after progression was 10%. In 10% of cases, in the year after, the patient needed to be treated for the desmoid. But if we analyze only the group B and C, so patient with a pregnancy after diagnosis, the estimated probability are lower. So we have 9% of risk of progression during pregnancy and 8% after, in the year after. At the same time, the chance to have an active treatment, to need an active treatment the year after, is only 5%. We repeated this analysis also using the RECIST criteria because this is a retrospective study. So we want to, it was difficult to analyze the data on all the population retrospectively. So we repeated on the 144 pregnancy where the data of the single measurement were available, but we had similar results. So that is very important. And the only independent factor risk factor for have progression were the increase in age and the type of pregnancy. That means that it's higher the risk to progress if you have a diagnosis right during the pregnancy. It is intermediate if you have if you are on active surveillance. The risk is lower if the tumor has been resected before the pregnancy. These are the spider plot that all the measurement. We have the beginning and the end of pregnancy over time, but if we put together the lines, we can see that this is a smooth plot of the previous one. We have the group of people. The green one are the people under active surveillance, and you can see that they are quite self-selecting because it's nice to see that the tumor was growing in the year before, then stabilized. At that point, after a median of two years of stabilization, people decided to get pregnant, and then nothing happened in the time after. We also measured the spontaneous regression and actually we found a spontaneous regression in 11% of cases during pregnancy and 23% after pregnancy, but we also observed, as in the general population of desmoid patient, a 25% of a chance of regression after a progression during pregnancy. This is the obstetric outcome, so we didn't find any significant difference from the expected incidence of complication in the Western population, in the Western country population. And we have only 4% of cases where a patient referred that they have a spontaneous loss that was actually due to the presence of desmoid, but these were patients with a very specific tumor location in the pelvis, in the paravaginal space, so it was quite a particular situation. So in summary, we have an estimated risk of progression of 18% and 30% during after pregnancy, but only 9%, 8% in the population who have a pregnancy after the diagnosis. We have a spontaneous regression around 10% during pregnancy, 23% of after pregnancy, but in case of progression, we can observe a spontaneous regression afterwards in 25% of cases. And the need to start an active treatment within 1 year after pregnancy is 10% overall, but 5.6% if you have a pregnancy after the diagnosis of the desmoid. So in conclusion, it's critical to distinguish between disease progression and need of treatment. For desmoid, we know about that, so the numbers of progression doesn't mean that the patient need a treatment. The estimated risk of progression of the desmoid during and after pregnancy are not higher than in the general desmoid population. Maybe is even lower, but probably biased because they self-selected themselves when decided to get pregnant. Spontaneous regression is possible. There is low rates of shift to active treatments. And most importantly, we did not demonstrate that the estimated risk that we described is caused by pregnancy. But we just described how often a desmoid progresses in occasion of a pregnancy. And importantly, this did not exceed the risk, the estimated risk in the general desmoid population as described in the observational trials that we heard about today. So I don't know if these were 5 minutes, but I want to thank all the patients who participated and the collaborators internationally.
I hope you'll be available after for questions if questions come up. That's very, very encouraging, right? DTRF was a site for this study and participated, and it's great to have those conclusions available to all of us. Thank you so much, Dr. Fiore.